All right, so I think that'll figure its way out. All right, perfect. I think we're good now. All right, so we'll wait for everybody else to kind of join when they join. Of course, this will be hosted on our YouTube channel, and we'll also send it out via email so everybody has it, including the PowerPoint slides. Just a little bit of housekeeping. If you have a question, there is a Q&A at the end of the call, but feel free to pop it in the chat. I'm pretty fluid and I can answer if it applies to the subject matter. For those that don't know me, my name is Dr. Erica Steele, and we'll talk about my background. And so I have an extensive educational background. I have 6 degrees in my field. They're all in the natural healthcare space. I've been in natural healthcare professionally for over 20 years. I've treated patients as a naturopathic doctor since, as a doctor since 14. However, I've been, like I said, treating patients naturally of some sort for a long, long time. I've had my clinical practice since 2009. And just continued to work through. So I started off as a massage therapist in the field many, many, many years ago, I think 2011, and just continued to go back to school. It really fascinated me, the healing process. So eventually I got an AS in psychology. I have a bachelor's in alternative medicine, a bachelor's in natural healthcare sciences, 1 doctorate degree in natural medicine, 1 doctorate degree in naturopathy. I have a master's in public health with a concentration in complementary and alternative medicine, and I'm a current PhD student in applied psychophysiology. So what does all that mean in a nutshell, right? So psychology, we know, is the study of the mind. It also looks at the pathology of the mind. It looks at disorders of the mind. Alternative medicine is really all of the modalities, so like herbs or homeopaths or things of that regard. Natural healthcare sciences really brings in the biosciences, so your anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, et cetera. It brings in the biosciences and how those interrelate. So there's natural occurring substances, and then there's a science behind how those naturally occurring substances work. An extension of that is that doctorate in natural medicine. So understanding how these pieces fit together, understanding what treatments are good for what, meaning, which homeopaths are good for this, or which herbs are good for this, or which nutrients are good for this, et cetera. And then the doctorate in naturopathy really focused in on, for my at least centered education, was more in the functional medicine, integrative medicine space. So that's all the laboratory assessment and clinical biochemistry, which allows me to create more individualized programs and individualized treatments for patients. I'm a master in clinical biochemistry and the application of it with patients. The public health degree really looks at things that affect public health policy, impacts how different cultural groups interpret healthcare, and how to serve different groups. But also it looks at public health matters, epidemiology, things of that regard. The concentration with complementary alternative medicine is really the history, sorry, my little doggy, is really the history of complementary, alternative, and integrative medicine, and how that history has influenced, or it has been influenced, I guess is a good word, through healthcare and through healthcare time. So a lot of history involved with that. That's mostly for legislation purposes. It's not particularly clinical practice applied. I mean, it can be, but and then applied psychophysiology is how the mind and the emotions and the body work together, or so they're incongruent, not working together, or congruent, working together. So it's how, the mind, the emotions play into the physical manifestations, and more into trauma, how trauma impacts. And then I actually am doing my dissertation on ancestral trauma and trauma that's passed down in the DNA. I'm a board certified naturopathic doctor through the American Naturopathic Association, which is the oldest naturopathic association in the country, founded by our founder, Dr. Benedict Lust, who came to the States in the late 1800s, early 1900s to bring naturopathy from Germany. I'm also certified in functional medicine. I took a 2-year postdoctoral training in laboratory diagnostics, and then also 2-year integrative medicine training, which integrates more allopathic medical practices, more of your conventional standards alongside the natural things. So I work very integratively with medical doctors, medical communities. I refer to them, they refer to me. We have a very synergistic relationship. So that's my professional background anyway. My personal background is I'm mixed race ancestry. I am 3 parts Native American, Potawatomi, Blackfoot, and Cherokee Indian. So it's coming from both sides of my family, Cherokee and Blackfoot on my mother's side, and Potawatomi on my dad's side. So we intersect with the Native blood. And I was raised in the Native way, so doing Native American spiritual work and various practices in the Native American culture. My mother's side is mixed race, but has African heritage, West African heritage. And then my father's side has Scottish, English, and Irish ancestry. So that's significant when we're dealing with ancestral trauma and dealing with healing ourselves from all of the generational wounds. So here in America, and other countries too, but especially in America, because we're such a melting pot, we have a lot of different types of trauma being infiltrated into our DNA from various different areas. It's not just linear in its approach. So that's going to be kind of an important part of the healing process for some of you, depending on what part of the journey that you're on. So growing up, I grew up a vegetarian. I was raised a vegetarian. I've been a vegan, a raw foodist. I'm a pescatarian currently. Grew up doing a lot of the spiritual work and really working with various different types of natural medicines. So both my parents were teachers in their own right. My mother was in medicine. My father is still in education. So. All right. So the purpose of this particular class is to explain the different types of healthcare practices, including mind, body, functional medicine, integrative medicine, also mind, body medicine, naturopathy, I'll include in that. And we'll discuss what a whole person approach is in healthcare, which addresses all aspects of self. We'll provide an overview of different services and collection, just kind of a basic overview, really. And we'll explain how these different parts really help patients to achieve optimal health and wellness. And we'll discuss the importance of creating individualized treatment plans. And I'll kind of talk a little bit about that. And I'll provide you some examples, and we'll ask some questions, etc. Again, if you're new joining, feel free to put your questions in the chat box. I'll keep lookout for that as it comes up, and we'll go from there. Okay, so these are the different aspects, and it's important to understand what each one do. And I'm not going to read it to you. That always drove me nuts in college when people read the PowerPoint. So mind body medicine is just that. It's the connection between the mind and the body, but it's also the connection between the mind and the emotions and the body. So many, many, many years ago, the mind and the body actually used to be considered as one, but because of the Catholic Church, I will have the PowerPoint available, and I'll send it out via email. Thank you for asking. So the Catholic Church actually discouraged the mind and the body to be coupled with the physical body. And so they were actually separated. And I can't remember the exact date of that, but you can look it up. I'm sure, Google it. So the mind and the body were pulled apart because they didn't want the mind and the body to be integrated. So now through evolution, through consciousness, through whatever you want to call it, in space and time where we are right now in our world, we're beginning to recognize, especially in the West. The East has continued to incorporate this and predates our medicine by over 10,000 years. But in the West, we've really resisted this concept that the mind creates emotions, and then the emotions can create physical manifestation of disease within the body. So that's why you go to a psychologist for your mental health, and you go to a doctor, medical doctor, or typically for your physical health. And they don't really communicate back and forth. The medical doctor can't recognize when things are more on a trauma level or an emotional level. And the psychologist or psychiatrist can't really recognize if something is on a physiological, meaning physical plane. So mind-body medicine really incorporates the two. And again, that's why I'm deepening that understanding in applied psychophysiology. It's how our bodies create these traumatic responses. So, the fight or flight responses, for instance, and how that impacts all of our different organ systems, from our cardiovascular system to our digestive tract, to our hormones, to our neurotransmitters, and how that impacts and manifests disease process. Functional medicine is more of a systems-based approach. So there's a lot more into laboratory diagnostics. So we take a lot of labs in functional medicine really to find root causes. So whether that's nutrient deficiencies, accumulated toxins, overall organ health and function, or areas of prevention, we really look to the laboratory. Like there's a saying in functional medicine, we don't guess, we test. So we can have hypothesis, but we always want to confirm that hypothesis with a laboratory diagnostics to prove or disprove what we're doing. And that's where we'll make recommendations for diet or supplements or any other interventions. That's why alternative medicine is kind of dangerous in the sense that there is no laboratory assessment. There is no system. It's more or less, okay, you're telling me this symptom. I'm going to look up in a book what herb is good for what. And then I'm going to just give you that herb haphazardly without a basis in science. So that's what functional medicine kind of brings to the party. Integrative medicine is recognizing and understanding the therapeutic process, and recognizing and understanding that there is a need at times for conventional medicine. That's why I also don't like the term alternative medicine, because it suggests you have to choose one or the other. I work integratively with allopathic doctors all the time, cardiologist, oncologist, endocrinologist, rheumatologist, because these are specialists in particular areas of the body where pathology, meaning disease process, begins to develop. So there is a place in medicine for experts in disease process. However, that is not the entire picture. In holistic medicine, we have to look at how all of these organ systems work together as a team. So I can look at a patient and assess a patient, and then from there go, okay, so, you're having, arrhythmias in the heart, for instance. That could be a magnesium deficiency, or it could be AFib, or it could be some other larger manifestation of disease. It could be grief, However, we need to, check our basis. And so I'm going to send you to cardio for, EKG, ECG, cardiac workup sort of thing, to rule all of pathologies out, because a lot of times people are very unconscious to their health. So they're not aware. So then things develop over time, and then boom, out of nowhere, quote unquote, they develop disease process. And I want to just say that we must begin to take radical personal responsibility with our health, because number one, nobody's going to come to save us. And number two, if we disassociate from our physical health and our physical bodies, we're not going to be aware of what's going on with it until, unfortunately, it's too late. I have a story that, it's very sad. I had a patient who really did not trust doctors, did not go to doctors, did not deal with doctors of any kind, and worked in a field that was highly toxic, was exposed to mold, didn't know that they were exposed to mold, then was exposed to herbicides and pesticides in the work environment, didn't know that there was a connection, ended up going into the hospital at 50 something years old and was diagnosed with a very aggressive liver disease. And then because of not taking that integrative approach, the allopathic doctors pretty much just, started up on the, chemo, radiation, and there's nothing wrong with that. But in this case, it actually inflamed it and made it a ton worse. And by the time I got the patient, after about 3 appointments, I was able to find these root causes based off of all the data I take on patients. By that time, the disease process of the body accelerated with the treatment of the disease process, had really taken over the health of the patient. And we, unfortunately, I was only able to work with them in the end stage process. And that's a whole nother part of what I do. And I'll talk about that later, but it's important to not ignore our health and not check out. And I get that many people do not trust conventional practices for many different reasons, either culturally, or they've had bad experiences or biases or discrimination or whatever, being dismissed or whatever. However, there are different types of doctors out there, me being one of them. And, we're here to really come together for you and support and encourage you. So lastly, I'll leave you with naturopathy. So again, I'm a board certified naturopath. We were kind of the original holistic doctors. Long time ago, in the early 1900s, there was many types of doctors. There was naturopaths, there was homeopaths, there was medical doctors, there was osteopaths, there was chiropractors. Naturopaths were very holistic, so were homeopaths, but we dealt a little bit more in the physical medicine space. And unfortunately, our profession was not financed and backed by Rockefeller. And so a lot of our schools closed down. There was a lot of infighting, even amongst our profession. The osteopaths joined in with the American Medical Association and was backed by Rockefeller Philanthropies. The chiropractors, they got together and created their own association. Our profession, the homeopaths, a lot of them died off, and because it's an old form of medicine. I'm trained in homeopathy as well, but I don't practice classical homeopathy anymore. The naturopaths, we just fight, and that continues to this day. There's a group that wants to include medication pharmacy in their training and practice, and then there's people like me who are kind of the last of the Mohicans, no pun intended, and trying to maintain and legislate for naturopathy to remain a drugless therapy. So a lot of back and forth, and this isn't a political conversation, but just so you're aware. All right, let's talk about a whole person approach. So this is actually the holistic medicine model. And I didn't make a slide, but holistic medicine pretty much incorporates all of it. It looks at you as a unique human being, right? So most people come into my practice for a physical manifestation of disease. Either they come in because they want to prevent disease. I'd say a small portion want to prevent disease. Most people come in because they have a chronic disease that they want to manage, or they want to prevent. They're afraid, they have a family history of it. I also treat a lot of high-level professionals who want to optimize themselves. I treat people with children who want to raise their children holistically. I treat a lot of people with mental health, anxiety, depression, schizoaffective disorders, things like that. I also treat people that want to heal their metabolism, either want to lose weight, gain weight, or they're athletes, etc. I treat mostly families, a higher percentage of women. I still treat a lot of men too, but traditionally speaking, that's kind of the demographic. All age ranges. I mean, I have patients that haven't even been born yet, all the way up to elderly people. So wide range there. And I work with them kind of on different levels. So we treat physically, right? So that's going to be physical nutrition and supplements and, laboratory testing and all the physical things that we can touch, see with our senses. But then as we get into a case, we look at the environment. So environment can be like environmental toxic exposure. It can be relationships and how a person sets boundaries for themselves, or it could be their work environment. Do they have purpose in their work environment? Do they feel fulfilled in their environment? And then we look at, mental health, the mindset. We look at core beliefs, subconscious mind and conscious mind awareness. We look at emotional health. So that could be suppressed emotion. It could be trauma responses. It could be unprocessed emotion. We look at a wide array of emotional health and well-being. We also look at spiritual health and connection to source, creator, God, whatever you want to call something outside of yourself, that we're all connected to in some way. And this is not about religion. I treat people from all over the world, all different religions, all different backgrounds. That's not a religious conversation. Spirituality is more of your connection with the godlike self, and also connection with source above yourself. So remember, I'm a Native American, so we think in very universal terms. We don't look at, this religion versus that religion. In my opinion, truth is one and paths are many, meaning that, whatever flavor that you express your spiritual connection with God, I'm 100% for it. There's 72 names of God. Choose one that works best for you. And then ancestral. So the ancestral piece really speaks into genetics. So I'm trained in genetics and methyl genetics naturally. And also how trauma gets passed down again in the DNA. Our generation especially has taken on a lot of the burdens of previous generations because previous generations were not as conscious. They were very much in survival mode. We're leaving survival mode now, and now we're kind of waking up. All of us are like, wait a second, I've got this mental health issue. I've got this emotional health issue. I've got, all these things. And some of these things are not mine. I've inherited them from my mom. I've inherited them from my dad, my grandmother, my sister, my brother, whoever. And so that's how the ancestry, we've had, in my own line, genocide, slavery, and famines, poverty, child labor, imperialism. So one part of me imperialized another part of me, which is kind of interesting. So we have a lot of different components, right, to our ancestry. There's also genetic makeup. So, under methylation issues, MTHFR issues, mental health, substance abuse, all kinds of things that we can actually link down to genetic SNPs within the DNA that I can test for and support and all these kind of things. We're not a product of our genes anymore. Genetics only counts for less than 30%. The rest is environmentally driven, what we put our genes in. All right. So now we're going to kind of talk about how we create individualized care, right? So individualized care. When I consult with a case, I take a very detailed health history. So really it's about me holding space for that person. And if you're not familiar with that term, holding space, very few times, especially if you're a strong human being, like if you're considered a strong human being because you have survived life up until this point, and you would know that you're a strong human being because people come to you with everything. You're kind of like supposed to be stoic, which is non-emotional, and you just take on the burdens of people around you, or, you're made to perform, or you've had trauma in your upbringing, or whatever the case may be. A lot of times those people have not had space held for them. They're continually holding space for other people. So I have a big energy. I have a big space. I can contain a lot. I can hold a lot. And I've done a lot of mental, emotional, psychosocial, spiritual work on myself practically to get to this point as a healer. I'm a doctor, but I'm also a healer. So I hold space for people. And just that practice alone is very powerful and very cathartic when somebody feels truly heard, validated, and understood, right? So I don't refute anybody's experience. Your experience is your experience. There's a lot of dismissal going on in the healthcare community. I'm a columnist for Psychology Today, and I just wrote an article about what happens when people get dismissed in healthcare settings, and it's very invalidating and it's very painful, and people lose trust in the medical community and with healthcare professionals. And so part of my practice is really holding that space for people in a consultation format. So I just listen, right? I listen, I take notes, I ask questions, and I'm listening for clues, right? So I'm listening for, and I'm trained listening. Like I spent years training in different programs to be able to listen. And if you train with me in my courses at Startup, I teach you how to listen in a very profound way. So, I listen. And then based off of that listening, right, I create a hypothesis. That hypothesis is nothing more than an educated guess. It's a sophisticated way to assess a situation. When I come up with that hypothesis, which is just an educated guess, I have to prove or disprove that hypothesis with lab assessment. Part of my PhD is in research, clinical research. So I think in those terms, in a clinical research term. So laboratory assessment. So now I'm taking either basic labs, and basic labs would be like what you would have at your annual physical with your primary care. Or if I feel a need or think that there's a need for an advanced lab, like an organic acids profile, which is a metabolic test, or let's people like a hormone panel of sorts, or, a GI panel or whatever. Some labs may not be appropriate to run right off. And I'll kind of explain why if anybody's interested. But, the point being is we want to assess. Again, we don't guess, we test. So we find out where the baseline numbers are. And then I typically will create a 30+ page report with even those basic labs that you get from your primary care. And I assess that in detail, where you are currently with your health and where you may need to go. I look at 2 sets of ranges, standard ranges and functional or optimal ranges. And then I'm looking for nutrient deficiencies, accumulated toxins, overall organ health and function in areas of prevention. And that serves as the basis and the foundation for me to create an individualized plan. Now, that's just treating the biochemistry, right? Based off my case taking, I'm going to assess, all those other levels: mental, mindset, emotional health and well-being, spiritual, ancestral can come, depending on how much work the patient's done, it can come right up front. Otherwise, it takes a while. Sometimes we just have to get people back into their bodies and get them conscious of how many grams of protein they're taking in, how much water they're drinking every day, because most people are unaware of these numbers. Like if I ask, like, how many ounces of water did you drink today? I don't know, a lot, I guess. When we start to measure it, they're like, oh, I'm only drinking 34 ounces of water or whatever, right? Or I go, how many grams of protein? Oh, I don't know, maybe 4. Well, if you're eating 4 grams of protein, you're not going to be up sitting and talking to me. You're going to be really depleted. Average human, adult humans, around 70 to 100 grams of protein. So, and knowing what protein sources are, and there's so many things when it comes to your health. And so I'm very detail oriented, and I prioritize things. You have to prioritize things in health. Naturally, if a person comes to me and they have so much emotional upset and so much trauma that they haven't processed, the last thing that they are going to be able to do is track their food. So I have to prioritize their mental and their emotional health first before we even get them into their physical health. Like we have to process all the emotions because they're literally jumping out of their bodies. So, this is where a skilled clinician really comes in handy and is able to really be that guide and that mentor and that teacher for health and well-being. Okay, so sometimes it's not, access is a really important thing. Sometimes it's just not feasible for people to work one-on-one. I mean, my prices are very affordable. in my opinion, based off of my education and experience and what the market can bear and what I could charge in different markets. However, originally I wanted to just make it accessible and affordable. And then I just started to kind of watch themes and things like that. And so I do offer a fair amount of online courses as well, especially too, because I travel the world. So working with different healers and teachers and learning from all different areas of the world. I travel quite often. Like this month, I go to Spain. So, and I still treat people virtually. So I treat people again all over the world. I actually am closing my physical practice at the end of the year, really to just be able to travel. And so I do a lot more online course offerings. Of course, I still treat patients individually and send them to labs wherever they're at. And we ship to them whatever remedies they need. But I definitely wanted to provide a more economical solution for people who that even wasn't attainable for them. So I have several mini courses. Some of our more popular ones are 21 Day to Smoke Free. That's a smoking cessation, completely natural, using homeopathy, clinical hypnotherapy, and detoxification. 21 Day organ detox. This is the springtime. Spring, if you follow the work of Dr. Elson Haas, he talked about this. So you want to follow the season. So spring is an amazing time to detoxify yourself. It's a renewal. We go from eating heavier foods in the winter to now eating lighter foods in the summer. So spring and fall actually are the best times to detox your organs. I always run labs when I'm detoxing a patient because you just never know what's underneath the surface. So I don't do detoxes like right out the box. They're all custom built. I don't do detoxes that are like you running to the bathroom or anything crazy. That's somebody who doesn't have experience and they're just selling a product. So that's not how I do it. I do it more. And even though it's an online generated course and you get remedies shipped to your house, I always require and look at your labs. And so even if we meet and talk about that. 30 Days to Healthy Eating is just really to teach people the fundamentals behind eating healthy. I typically it's a 4-week course. And really it teaches a person from the ground up, how to eat. So even though I've cooked for years and all that fun stuff, it's not something that I enjoy doing, believe it or not. I eat so I don't die. So, I typically do food prep 20 minutes, less than 20 minutes, less than 5 ingredients at a time. And because I'm so busy with my life, creating my life rather, and being productive in my life, food preparation is not one of those things. So I do teach how to do it efficiently, cheaply, all that fun stuff. Transformational courses are longer courses. It takes you through an experience. So if you want to learn how to create a holistic lifestyle, I've developed Holistic Makeover. That also bleeds into holistic weight loss. So if there's other issues underlying in your weight loss, like, emotional, mental, spiritual things, that's what that course is for. And then I have a personal growth and self-development course that one's a year-long course, and you get videos and journal prompts every single day. So, it's a really in-depth course that I've written myself. I also do VIP courses. So I'm in the media a lot. So I'm on television, and like I said, I'm a columnist, I'm a writer, and just a creator in general. And so I'm launching with one of the executive producers of the Oprah Winfrey Show. Of course, Oprah's no longer on air, but one of their producers started a women's group, if you will, called the Support System. And so I am their resident doctor. I'm her doctor, and I'm also their resident doctor. So we'll be she's already launched it, but I will be launched as their doctor, personal doctor in May. So if you enjoy my trainings and coachings and all that kind of stuff, that's an amazing place. It's very low low entry. I think it's only like $77 to be part of that program per month. And she does like daily meditations, and it's just really an amazing group of women. I do family intensive. So like, for instance, in that one example I was telling you about, where I worked with that family, right? So I would go, like I go into the hospitals, or I go into different facilities or whatever, and I work with the family. Like, you know, in that particular case that I mentioned, half the family was like, no, he's going to walk out of here. And, you know, he trusted me very much so. So at the end, you know, all the medical directives and things like that, I had to work alongside, you know, the hospitalists, and work alongside the care team, but also really hold that space and care for the family so that they could process through what was going on. So it could be a very peaceful experience, while also setting boundaries. I do a lot of patient advocacy. So like, for instance, I have a patient who's a medical student right now, and her son is in, you know, some pretty intensive care. And I serve as the medical proxy because she's not available. So, you know, they call me and say, hey, can he have this? Can he have that? Can he have this? Can he have that? And I say, yes, no, what about this? What about that? You know, and I just work on that level. So, you know, I'm also advanced directives for people as well when they don't have family members that they trust in their family for the end of life care. So I serve a lot of different roles for people. I'm also launching a group coaching program, and that one's a little bit more geared towards kind of walking people through a process from beginning to end. And so you get the group support as well, lower cost than working with me individually, but we still, like, I'll look at your labs and all that kind of stuff. I also do retreats. So in different countries I'm at, I do, or in some states that allow it, I do plant medicine retreats. So I work with psilocybin, ayahuasca, various different indigenous plant medicines, and can facilitate healing for pre-integration, the treatments, and then post-integration, which is really important to integrate back into self after these situations. And then also I have a couple yoga certifications, one in just integral hatha yoga, and one in Kundalini yoga, which is more of a spiritual based yoga. And also do meditation and various different things. The one thing I didn't mention is that I actually, at the end of this month, if you're part of my email list, I will be launching my holistic health coaching program, where I'm teaching people how to actually a structure around holistic health coaching. I've just seen too much craziness out there these days. And wanted to, I'm an educator as well. So as if you can't tell. So I wanted to teach people the right way, how to actually coach people to create results and not harm people. So if you're interested in that, let me know. All right. So why individualized care? So every human being is very unique. And so we have to treat every human uniquely, right? So that requires assessment of data, whether that's subjective data, what the patient tells us, or that's objective data, like a lab assessment. So there has to be some sort of measurement for what we're doing. We have to have a baseline, and then we have to measure it as we're going along. And then as we collect that data, we have to organize and structure the problems, right? So people are going to come into the practice with lots of problems. And it's my job to organize into step-by-step solutions. And that's where coaching comes in. So I analyze the data, I teach people what the problems are, and then I coach them on the solutions. We're very solution-oriented. And then we hold the person accountable so that they receive the results that we're looking for. And it's not just about, I feel better placebo wise, but actually the lab work is improving. Their mental health is improving, and that's in a quantifiable format, meaning we can measure mental and emotional health and well-being. We can measure all this stuff, which, I'm a scientist, I'm a doctor, I'm a healer, but I'm also a scientist too. And I like to prove things that are not provable. And that's the only way that, unfortunately, will advance in the medical structure. So we assess the data, we organize it, structure it, coach a person on it, and then we hold them accountable to achieve results. Now, accountability is very different for a lot of people. And accountability is where people can resist, right? Because people, what is it? Carl Jung said, having is evidence of wanting, so if you have a lot of problems in your life, believe it or not, subconsciously, you like these problems, you want these problems are serving something, whether it is to stay the victim or stay helpless or hopeless or powerless or avoid responsibility or whatever your jam is. If you have these issues in all areas of your life, whether that's, your relationships or your finances or your physical health and well-being, or your career or whatever, there is something holding you back. And so when we start to change those paradigms, there is going to be resistance. There is going to be breakdowns. There is going to be, I don't know anybody that just comes in and is like, okay, great. Like I would say years ago, I had one case. She was a farm girl, married, and had maybe like a third or fourth grade education or something, and came in. And I did the labs with her and I walked her through. And after I think about like maybe 4 to 6 months, she came back and said, she goes, all right, I'm good. I'm ready to go. And I was like, okay, well, let's check and let's make sure everything's good. And we looked at it, and all the results that she wanted to create, boom, she did them. And I was like, yeah, perfect, good to go, because she didn't resist. And I think part of the reason she didn't resist is because she came in completely open, because she hadn't been indoctrinated by other educational formats. So she was just open to receiving information. That's rare, right? Most people, they want to fight, they want to resist, they want to, and so that's also why in my role, and if you learn from me to do this work, you have to be willing to stand in non-agreement with people. You have to be willing to be a part of the resistance and hold what's true and what's accountable for that person to achieve the results or the outcome that they're looking for, whether they like it or not, whether they believe it or not, whether they, think it's the right way or not, right? That's why we can't be our own doctors. That's why we can't treat our family and friends, there's a reason for that. So we can be objective and we can see on the outside. So. All right. So I've had, I've treated over 40, 50,000 people at this point. So I had a lot of testimonials. So I talked about like one of the liver issues. I have another case that, came in to me and was diagnosed with like, I think they had landed on like cirrhosis of non-alcoholic cirrhosis of the liver. And as we started, doing all the case taking, et cetera, it came back to mold exposure from college. Now this woman she's in her like 50s, right? So from college, now that was over 20 years that they had been giving her prednisone, they'd been giving her, immune suppressants, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, and so years and years and years of that. So as we developed and figured out the root causes of black mold exposure in her body, we're taking her liver enzymes down from, in the 400s down to, now they're in the hundreds, and we're going the next phase and the next phase. So, assessment is really important. A diagnosis is nothing more than a sophisticated labeling system. It's good to manage diseases when they get out of hand, but at a certain point, the rubber meets the road, because my hypothesis would have been if she would have kept on doing the rounds of prednisone and doing the rounds of immune suppressants, that, that could have been very detrimental to her health long term. And so I'm grateful that she trusted me and we're working through the process, and she's getting better. And even though we're not completely done with the case, we're definitely moving, to the level that we need to be at. So, yeah, and obviously, there's a lot of complexity to the case. The liver also holds on to resentment, anger, frustration. So she's also had some experiences in relationships that contributed to it as well. So root causes of emotional health. So on the homepage of my website, there's a little lady who, when she first came to me, she couldn't even look me in the eye. She just looked on the floor and had some traumatic events that happened to her, and just was so defeated and so just traumatized by life. I mean, anxiety, depression, substance abuse, relationship issues, like all kinds of things going on, family, issues. And over the course of time of working with her, you just slowly got to see her just elevate and begin to make eye contact and begin to just come out of her shell and really reclaim her health. And a lot of it was because we were processing through all those emotional traumas and the wounds, because if we don't process them, we're going to suppress them, and then they get stored in the body and manifest eventually in disease. That's what adverse childhood experiences are. That's what trauma is. And the higher your adverse childhood experience score, the more propensity towards chronic disease, illness, substance abuse, etc. And that has been studied by the CDC. So they named it finally, so me being, healed from lots of deep mental, emotional, spiritual, sexual trauma myself, it allows me to be able to teach people practically, not just from this is what I learned in a book, but yeah, this is real life. This is how it feels. This is what, you may go through. This is what you may experience. And this is how I got out of it. So really not feeling alone is so important as a part of the healing process. What I've learned over these years is we can only meet people as deep as we're willing to meet themselves, which is why I continue to do the work on myself. I did a good piece of work this morning before I even, did this class with you guys. This is part of my lifestyle. It's just what I do. It's like brushing my teeth. And I work on my emotions, and I work on my mental health, my mindset, and my physical health. The last testimony I'll tell you about is ancestral health, so how that plays in. So I had a patient, she's still a patient, but I came in and she had stage 2 breast cancer diagnosis. And she did not want to do any sort of conventional practice, which is her choice. So I said, okay, well, we'll create a structure around it and look at the data. And, we've got to make sure that we're, I sent her to 2 oncologists, just to make sure, to get 2 opinions of the issue. And they said, double mastectomy and chemo, radiation, the whole bit, right? And she said, no, I'm just not willing. She goes, let's try this natural. So I agreed. I said, okay, but we're going to monitor this really closely, because if anything goes left, right? So we did, and we worked through, come to find out the cause was actually her amalgam fillings in this particular case, which, mercury drainage into, breast cavity, which manifested into disease process. Now her metabolism was not healthy. So all diseases begin in from breakdowns in the metabolism. So it wasn't, that was just a symptom. The cancer was just a symptom, but that we were able to get rid of that in about 4 to 6 months. Pretty good. All CTs clear and have been clear ever since. And then so we go, okay, let's work on the metabolism. Let's work on releasing this weight, right? Because she's a little bit overweight. And that was actually the harder part. And the reason being is because she was holding on to so much trauma from her family, her past, and just like holding on for dear life. And so the ironically, the breast cancer was easy, right? I was like, okay, good. The weight and the emotional weight that she was holding on to was far harder. And so now, we've moved through that process, and now she's she's on a path, and she's, I think she just dropped like 16, 20 pounds, something like that. But I find it ironic. And I did a testimonial video with her, if you guys want to check out on my YouTube. I don't know if it's come out yet, but I did a video with her where we kind of interviewed and talked about all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, it was, ironic, right? It's like, okay, so I can deal with this diagnosis, but, this other piece, so you just kind of see how all this stuff plays in. I started off kind of very linear as we're trained, you run a lab, you treat the lab, the person's kind of secondary. And I really learned after a while that none of the patients actually fit into the books. And so I put the books aside and really started listening to people, and also healing myself, which has always been a thing. So, all right. So now I'm going to open up the floor to questions. And I'm happy to answer anything that you may have. So I'll just wait a few minutes and kind of let you guys do your thing. And if there's no questions, that's fine as well. I'm happy to move on. Usually there's always like a couple questions. So there we go. Was it challenging for you to start your health career? I guess it would be what a defining challenge. So my whole life, by the definition of challenge, right? So meaning it's been difficult and I've had to overcome. I'd say my whole life has been that way. My career was kind of a given. So background story, both my parents were Marines. My dad was a drill instructor. My mom had a mental illness, and she had a psychotic break when I was 8. And she has 18 different personalities. So they diagnosed, it was multiple personalities, and then they changed it to DID. So, it was really more out of necessity, right? I ran around labs as an early child. My mom had me, my mom did cancer research for NIH. So I ran around labs. I did all these Native American ceremonies and things like that. And I always knew I'm an indigo, if you know what that is, like a prodigy. So I kind of always knew I was going to be a doctor. It was just a matter of what type of doctor I was going to be. So my career, I wouldn't say it's been challenging, because it was about me healing myself to help other people. So I was always good in school. That part was easy. I'm very God-led. So, like, if he said, no, that's not the way, or this way, like I always followed my path. I was resistant. I'm different from other people where like they didn't know what they wanted when they grew up. Like I knew, and I rebelled, right? And so God put me in little timeouts at times to kind of, make me think. And so, yeah, I would say, I'd say if anything has been disheartening, it's just been public perception of me and who I am, and some of the just crazy things people say to you, like, oh, are you a real doctor? Or, they'll say, oh, you're a quack, or, public humiliation or whatever. I would say some of the staffing business challenges I've had, like, people stealing money from me, people reporting me, people discrediting me, I would say that was more kind of the challenge than my work. Like my work has always been my craft and has always been sacred to me. But the actual business part, that I think had a little bit more meat on it. let's see. I have a lot of paths. How did you decide on those areas? So I was very led, right? So very led. Naturopathy found me. I didn't find naturopathy. A little girl, again, like knew I was going to be a doctor. I mean, when you're running around labs, my stepmom was a geneticist. You're running around her labs in the Genome Project. You're running around biochemical labs. You're sitting in organic chemistry classes at 5 years old. Something's like, wait a second, why, these are not typical environments for a child. At the same instance, I'm like going to Native American sweats and, doing Reiki attunements and rebirthings. And, this is all before the age of 12, acupuncture, with these Chinese healers that have come over, so I always kind of knew there was a world that you could prove or disprove through science, but then there was a world that was faith-based and you couldn't prove or disprove, but you knew that it worked for whatever reason. I eventually left my house at 16 years old because the abuse was so bad that I had to leave. And I have a great relationship with both my parents, and we love each other and all the things. And they were traumatized and did the best they could. And I was traumatized and did the best I could, and so I left really to reclaim myself and heal. And then I just kind of was led, so I knew I was going to be a doctor. I researched all the types of doctors. I couldn't be a medical doctor because I didn't resonate with Rockefeller. Also, my mom's bathroom looked like a Walgreens pharmacy. So I knew allopathic medicine really wasn't the solution. I looked at being a chiropractor because I was a massage therapist, and it just didn't resonate with me. Like when I went, there was just something funky that happened. I looked at becoming a naturopathic medical doctor, just something funky happened that was like red flag for me, with the pharmaceutical. I looked at being an osteopath. I went to a training or something, and there was an osteopathic student there who was like totally discouraging. I called a medical school one time and they were like, yeah, we think you're better off staying in natural health. I mean, there was like so many, I was like, okay, God. And then, the naturopathy kept coming back to me. It was like haunting me. And, eventually I went to a naturopath and was like, this is not even naturopathy, what you're doing. You're just selling people a whole bunch of supplements and running a whole bunch of labs that they don't need. And then I was like, okay, finally, I need to do this. I can do this. So, I was really just, because our profession is still so fragmented and not legitimized, which is why I'm building a school to bring more people into the profession and teach more people really how to do it the right way, and also do it successfully too. So, because otherwise our profession is going to die, and that's just the real, because there's not enough of us anymore who are practicing. So. I'm, work with the board, the national board, and I do legislation and all that kind of stuff. So, it's just, I was always led, divinely inspired, and I was brave. I had enough rebel in me and enough bravery in me that I just kind of jumped out and did what I thought was best. And I didn't waver from that. So that's kind of how I did it. This was way before it even became a thing. It was even popular. People were even into it. Like we were just a whole bunch of hippies and quacks a long time ago. So this kind of evolution has kind of come, while I've been, in copious amounts of school and treating patients and like my head down, is really just about mastery and learning and making sure that I'm, not harming people. That was really my biggest thing, so thanks for asking. Yeah, for sure. Let's see. Thank you for all the information you've shared. It gives me so much hope that holistic and accessible healthcare exists. One question: how do you make time for your one-on-one patients? Asking this question since time seems to be a major limiting source in allopathic medicine. Okay, so I structure my time. Okay. So I have done a lot of training in leadership, integrity, and professional attainment. So I did a course one time, it's a leadership course, and at the beginning, it was like in DC, right? And so you had to travel to DC and had to travel to New York. And like the first day they come in and they give you like this big binder and they want you to read all of it. And you have to like sign your life away kind of. And they go, okay, this is a 9-month program. Your life is not going to fit into this program. Like, and they meant it, boy. They were like, your life's not going to fit into this program. So, but here's the thing. If you want to leave now. If not, sign, and away we go. And it was crazy, you know, between all the agreements that you had to make and all the integrity conversations you had to have and the breakdowns and the breakthroughs, and it really just broke you down into this kind of limiting construct called time, right? And so all of your resistance around, you know, time, procrastination, getting stuff done, organization, structures, discipline, you know, hiding out, fear. I mean, all of your issues attached to all of that in the subconscious mind come to the surface and really get pretty much broken down. So I really attribute my integrity to time and my structure of time really to that program. So that's a caveat. With that being said, my time is very structured. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I see one-on-one patients 8 to 2. Tuesdays and Thursdays, I see one-on-one patients 2 to 8 p.m. Every third Saturday, I see one-on-one patients between 10 and 2. So I only treat patients 35 hours every week. Then, you know, Monday afternoons from 2 to 6, I work with my staff on various things and create structures for them. I have an extensive staff. Tuesdays, I work on my finances from 8 to 1. I pay all my bills and structure all that because I still do that personally. But I have bookkeepers and CPAs and all the things. Wednesday afternoon, 2 to 6 is like catch up from Monday and Tuesday, whatever I didn't get done with operations or with finance gets done on Wednesday, looking over reports, things like that. Thursday from 8 to 2 or 10 to 2, a lot of times that is time when I film content or I do lunch and learns, or sometimes, you know, I'll be on television, do different television spots that day, or Tuesday, if, you know, they can only do Tuesday. Friday afternoon is kind of catch up, but also relaxation. And then the weekends, I really just allow myself to flow on the weekends, whatever I feel like kind of embodied to work on, I do. So, yeah, I structure my time, and I'm very disciplined with my time, and not a lot of people are disciplined with their time. So like my close friends and family, even, like, they know like time is a construct for me that is really important. And so, you know, I even structure like, you know, time when I go out with my friends, when I go to dinner, when I, you know, pretty much anything that I do, fun activities, you know, when I go to Spain, like I'm working while I'm in Spain, but I also have already structured my, you know, I structured a paddleboarding and I structured some sailing. And so there's 165 hours in the week, I believe, or 168, one of the two, I can't remember. And so it's really about telling your time what it is you want to do. So I have done a lot of work in the time management space and got rid of all my limiting beliefs around time. And so I just prioritize things and I structure my time, and I give myself space, and I'm realistic with myself. And I'm also very focused. I've done a lot of hours of neurofeedback, neurostem, to get my prefrontal cortex, my executive functioning, to fire properly. So my amygdala is not in fight or flight. So it's really dialed down. And that way I can make clear decision-making and I can focus, you know, in lots of little details. And I've worked a lot on my emotional body. So I'm calm. I'm not going into dopamine catabolism where I always need like a little hit of something. And I'm not dumping down into serotonin where I'm going into a depressive, unmotivated state. I'm very emotionally balanced, mentally balanced, spiritually balanced. And I create space for myself in my own life. So yeah, that's how I structure my time, and I make time and prioritized. So, and then with teaching, that's a lesser commitment actually, mostly just because I'm working with groups. And then as things evolve, like I used to do a lot of complimentary 15-minute appointments, like one-on-ones, and I've transformed those into group 15-minute appointments instead of one-on-ones, because it doesn't value my time. And as I do more work, around like my worth and value and all of that, like I'm doing work right now on worth and value and being cherished, I'm cleaning all that stuff up, all of those previous behaviors that were not in alignment with that. So thanks for the question. So yeah, I always make time. Of course, I do book out, in advance, but I do make time for like emergency cases. Like I had an emergency case, I think last week, and they just had to be seen that day. And so, I was able to structure that time for them. So it just depends on the case, on the week. If you don't mind, can you share a little bit about when and how you started your spiritual journey? So I started my spiritual journey literally like out the womb. Like my mother, being a native and a healer, has pretty much done spiritual work my whole life. My dad has started his spiritual work within the last several years. So, I grew up like really in this very powerful energy, and grew up, my godmom is a Native American chief. So I grew up knowing that, spirit was a part of my life. I grew up with a relationship with spirit. And then when you're going through so much polarity and so much darkness, right? So I went through a lot of darkness and polarity in the beginning of my life. And what I mean by polarity is, I with my mom, I got to see really the depths of the human consciousness, right? I got to see what happens when trauma is passed down and people are fighting themselves and you just happen to be there. And, when reality is not quite reality. And so when you see that, right, and that's your mother, there's no kind of other place to turn but God, right? And so I always kind of had that relationship back and forth. So it was never like, oh, now I'm starting this. Like it's always been a part of my life from pretty much day one. And I always had a very kind of back and forth relationship, like almost like a parent-child relationship with God. I wasn't always like obedient to God. Like I would, was kind of early on, I was pretty like rebellious and, sex, drugs, rock and roll, that kind of thing. And went to, I was so angry, and so in my teenage years, I pushed a lot of envelopes, and I could definitely can attest that my angels were working and ancestors working double, triple overtime. I also have always had my ancestors with me. I've always been able to feel them, be with them. They've come in many ceremonies with me. I can talk to them anytime. So that's been really powerful for me as a native, and even just going into some of these lands, like when I go into Arizona, where a lot of the Indians kind of fled after, they were slaughtered, like, I mean, that's some intense land for me to be on. Like I really connect with the land there, but then each land kind of has a different experience. So I'm very embodied. I'm in my body, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. I'm very conscious and present, and I feel and I pay attention and I'm aware. One of the things I think too, with growing up with a mother with mental illness like that and multiple personalities, is it really comes out of a place of survival that you never know who you're going to walk into, because the person you leave in the morning when you go to school is not always going to be the same person when you come back home. Could be a totally different person. So you become very intuitive and really rely on, God to keep you safe. And then when I left with nothing but the clothes on my back at 16, it was pretty much just me and God, and I just allowed him to lead me and guide me. And I went through periods of like not trusting that inner wisdom, and who am I to think that I'm, like, I definitely have always been, working and growing and evolving, and whatever piece of work kind of shows up for me to look at. Even if I resist myself a little bit in the process, I still keep showing up and still keep doing the work, and I've had some amazing teachers and healers and people that I've worked with for years, that have helped me and guided me and worked with me. So, yeah, it's definitely an all team effort. I'm very confident that if you ask, it will be answered. So, if I'm stuck or if I have a question or something, I'll just go into meditation and I'll pray, God show me. And it's simple prayers. Like it's not elaborate or whatever. It's just, God show me this, that, and the third, or, God help me with this, or, God open these doors for me, or whatever. And usually for me anyway, usually within 24, 48. Now, bigger things that I want to create, like, a partner or something like that, there was a lot of stuff in the way that I had to clear. So like for me to create a partner, I had to go to Peru and do a lot of work there and clean a lot of stuff up and work with some shamans out there. And, so I just have always been led. How I got to Peru was I was working with a shaman in Carolina, and my ancestors came in and were like, "You're going to Peru, girl." And I'm like, what's in Peru? I don't even know what Peru is. Funny thing is, like, I had already bought a ticket to Peru, like I think a year before, and I hadn't booked the trip yet. So like, I just follow the breadcrumbs. Trust yourself, trust your guidance, trust your intuition. Like something led you here. This, I may have sparked something and now it's going to lead you somewhere else. So just trust in the process, I would say. That's been the most amazing thing. My triggers also have been a really good guide for me. So right now I'm like really triggered by my significant other. So it's forced me to like, I gotta like not focus on him and focus on me and just like go in and heal myself. So I like did a piece of work this morning on my heart and did some pretty heavy lifting. And so it was good, so yeah, definitely use your external as a mirror to internal. And then it's like a mirror, so you have to take radical responsibility with everything that's showing up for you. And then look at, what the inverse is. I've read a lot of books. I've done a lot of study. I've practiced a lot of things. And also too, in healing trauma, like I also am at the phase where I don't have to be re-traumatized to heal. And so sometimes if we're working with people, well-intended people, and they're inadvertently re-traumatizing us, that's a sign that this is not a good fit, or they don't have what you need in order to help, etc. Like there's a difference between being triggered and being re-traumatized. So because I had complex post-traumatic stress, I went through a lot of that in the beginning that I had to get through. And that's where kind of that neurofeedback and neurostem really came in handy, because it helped my brain, because my brain had gone through so much developmental trauma, which is also what drives my PhD program too. So hopefully that answered your question. I know it was long. So yeah. Any other questions? Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. Just trust, like quiet your mind, and some days, like sometimes you meditate and you'll be like kind of Guruji and want to like levitate. Other days you'll meditate and your mind's just like racing. So put your mind on a leash. It's like a dog. You can't just let it run around the block without adult supervision. So put it on a leash, right? And sometimes if your mind is racing and sitting, just go, okay, what am I doing right now? What am I doing right now? Because it's a trauma response, really. It's in hypervigilance. So you just go, okay, I'm sitting here, I'm breathing, I'm got my hands on my lap or whatever. Just kind of keep bringing yourself back to center and breathe, and also you put a cold pack on your chest too. That'll help the vagal nerve kind of calm down a little bit. Because it's in a fight or flight mode. And you just ask, you say, okay, show me what I need, show me what's going on, show me whatever, tell me, teach me, find for me, I need this, da, da, da. And then just kind of stand back, get out of the way and let it come. I make it sound simple. There's a lot of steps involved, but that's pretty much a simple process to discovery, in my humble opinion.
Hi, Erica. Do you mind if I unmute to ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
I just find this way easier than putting it in the chat.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I have a little anecdote and then like a broader question.
Okay.
I come from a scientific background and I am of Indian heritage, and so spirituality is very much goes back ancient and generational for me, but I was born and raised in the States, and so I'm relatively new to the spiritual world. My mom's always been on and off spiritual, but I'm finally getting into it on my own. I'm 23 years old, just for context. And so something I kind of struggle with is I try to intellectualize things that come into my life, and I was curious how you, I guess, harmonize or internalize the different advices and stories you've been given or consume. So one example is I went to a meditation group with people of color, had a wonderful experience, but we did these certain movements. And one of the movements was to tap the kidneys, bring the hands from the back of the ankles to the top, and then do a little like back bend. And every time I did that, I got like extremely dizzy and like lost my senses for like 30 seconds. I thought I almost blacked out. And I tried to intellectualize it as, oh, this is like the blood isn't trying to go back to my brain. I just kind of, it was my blood. But then the teacher was like, whoa, you were so into that. Your soul was trying to leave your body. And I just wasn't sure how to interpret that. And I feel like throughout my life, I've just struggled to harmonize different people's interpretations of my experience. And I don't know. I guess I'm struggling to find my truth. So I'm curious how your approach has been to that, or what your recommendation might be. And I don't want to divulge from like, I know this is a Q&A session about.
No. That was a good question. No, I love that question actually, because that question is so prevalent today, because there's so many people that profess wisdom, right? And there's a lot of people, so we've left the era of guruism, right? So guruism was like really big in like the 80s and 70s. Like there was like one person, like, especially in like the yoga world, or, even you see like some of the televangelists and people like that, like, there's like one message, one, universal truth, and you have to follow blah, 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 right? So I want you to look at all of the information that's being out there is really just that, is data, right? So we'll start on the intellectual plane. So if everything coming in is data, right? So, you're in an isolated experiment, right? You're doing different dances, right? You're tapping different things, right? And then based off of the treatment, which is what you're doing, right? You have an experience, right? So then there's a hypothesis, right, that it's because of A, B, and C, LMNOP, whatever, QRS. So now I go, okay, so the teacher's telling me LMNOP, right? Now I'm going to go, okay, so was that really LMNOP? Let me sit with that for a minute. If it vibrates inside, if it's like a kind of almost like an internal guitar string, I know that resonates, right? If it's kind of like, I don't know, right? I don't know, LMNOP doesn't quite sound right? We want to trust it. Right? It doesn't mean that that's right or wrong. It just means that it doesn't resonate, right? Resonance and embodiment is when whatever's being said resonates within you, right? And not everyone has ultimate truth, and you're the one that has ultimate truth, right? So let's say, you're like, okay, well, I'm gonna reflect on that, whatever they said. And now I'm going to just be open to another possibility. And let's say another possibility, pops into your head, right? Now you're going to sit with that and go, okay, I wonder what that was. Does that resonate? Right. And again, it's like that guitar string vibrating. Right. And then maybe there's other possibilities. Right. And then in that instance, right? So when I think about the kidneys, I think about filtration and what it does. I think about movements, in terms of moving the blood, but also blood and kidneys, the kidneys filter the blood, right? And then also too, it's going to filter toxicity, right? And so vagal nerve is going to respond to that, right? Which would make you dizzy. Adrenal glands also sit above the kidneys. They respond to stress, and then that can also affect minerals, right? So there's multiple possibilities, right? And none of them are right or wrong. It's just a matter of, does this resonate with me like a guitar string? Like if I was an instrument, does this vibrate harmoniously with my song? There's something in the Native American culture we call sing song, right? When you pretty much sing on a person's soul and you sing on a person's heart, and boy, it's powerful, and it helps you to develop that resonance and that intuition within self. So I would also stand in your diversity and your truth, right? So your people comes from many, many lands, right? Many places. And each one of them brings this beautiful aspect of yourself. And so we want to integrate all aspects of self into one to create more of an integrative approach and be more connected to the land that both you're living on and standing on, but also the lands that your people once walked on. And that will help you to feel more confident and more fully supported in walking your truth. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Thank you so much, Erica.
Yeah. Do you have any other questions regarding that?
No, I just think I have a lot to think about there. Because I am very early on in my journey. I just got certified as a yoga teacher this past summer, so I'm starting there and trying to learn Sanskrit and work with some of the Hindu scriptures. But there's so much out there, like you said. I think it's like overflow of data. It can just be hard to harmonize that, and I think I need to focus more first on the internal aspect of embodiment and coming back to my body and practicing, when I encounter all this information, is it resonating? I think for most of my life, I've just skipped that step. And it's been in my head, the intellectualizing so much. And I identify as female. And I think for us, especially, it's really in the body. And I think step number one is for me to get back in tune with that, and then seek out the information and start to actually understand whether it does resonate or not.
Yeah. So there's two types of, and I'm going to generalize here, so bear with me, two types of people, right? There's people that are non-self-regulators, meaning they emotionally react. They go from 0 to 10, 2.5 seconds. Or then there's people that just shut it all down. They go, I have an emotion. I don't know what to do with it. I don't know how to organize this or process this mentally or emotionally, so I'm just going to shut it down. That especially happens when you've experienced trauma. The mind tries to intellectualize trauma, and so it'll shut down the emotions. So that's where embodiment comes in. You can't unlock your spiritual truth until you heal your emotional body. So who is it that talks about the pain body? It was Eckhart Tolle. He talks about the pain body, not to give you more intellectual things, but just so you know. EFT, emotional freedom technique, can help with that. Journaling can help with that. EMDR can help with that. Cognitive behavioral therapy can help with that. Clinical hypnotherapy can help with that. Somatic therapies can help with that. NLP can help with that. So it's really about naming what your emotions are. So even if the emotion is confusion, that's an emotion. And then you go, where do I feel that confusion in my body, right? Where is that coming from, right? So when I think about confusion, where do I feel that in my body? And I close my eyes and I just sit and listen with my body, right? And let's say the confusion comes from my gut, right? So we know the gut is solar plexus, it's fear, right? And so we go, okay, I give myself permission to feel my fear about my confusion, and that's okay. And I choose, right, to transform my fear into my faith, right? So that begins to bring it from the intellectual plane into the emotional space and teaches you how to embody and transform unprocessed emotions, because pretty much you just have unprocessed emotions. And that's why you try to intellectualize, because it's a coping mechanism. You try to understand what happened, but there's nothing to understand. You have to feel it. And I still struggle with this. Even to this day, like I will go, I feel, and then I go, okay, what's the psychology behind it? And then I'm like, no, stop it. It's not about the psychology. It's about where does it feel and where do I feel it in my body? Which is why I did the piece of work this morning where I just laid down and I went into my body and I found a place that was tense and sore, which for me, it's a lot around my heart and my lungs. And I just spoke to it. I spoke to my organs. I spoke to what I was feeling. I validated what I was feeling. I held my heart, I held my organs, I held things. And then when I was grieving, because I was really grieving, I allowed myself to then release it with love, honor it with love, and transform it into something else. So yeah. Hopefully that helped. Do you have any other questions about that?
No, that is beautiful and just really encouraging to hear, now that I'm finally like starting to do things like somatic work, and it's just very reinforcing for me that I'm in the right place. Just gotta keep chugging along. And I didn't want to make this about myself. I hope other people were able to take away something from that. But thank you so much for asking my question.
So I'll leave you with this, right? So allow yourself to take up space, right? So I'm leading this. And so it's my responsibility to guide and direct and all that kind of stuff. It's not necessarily the participants, right? So it's safe to hold up space. It's safe to be seen. It's safe to be poured into. It's safe to be nourished. It's safe to be loved. It's all safe. And then somebody said, yeah, we're learning from you as well, and hearing from different perspectives. So it does add texture to the conversation, right? So I love doing these kinds of things and teaching people, because, I've learned a lot over all these years, and I want to share. Like, I'm at the place now where I want to give it all away, like I want to really just share, and yeah, people are like, yeah, I learned from it and all that kind of stuff. So it really helps with real life examples, actually, because then people can glean from it. That's kind of the same learning method that like the 12-step programs are built off of, and other different like self-help groups like Landmark and stuff like that. You learn based off of other people kind of doing the work. And what's cool is that there's no accidents why the people that have come on this particular call are here, right? And so you standing up and sharing, like, just look at the dichotomy, right? Get out of the human of it, right? You're the only one that felt safe enough to use their voice and open up the mute, right? And then share, right? And so in some ways, and then I'm coaching and working with you, et cetera, in real time and real life, right? And so in a lot of ways, you're actually helping do some of the heavy lifting for some of the people that didn't feel safe to open up their mic and share. So it's all perspective, and it's all how you look at it. It's not necessarily wrong or bad. So one of the things that I'm working on right now is being unapologetically authentic, right? Just sharing myself. This is who I am, as big as I am, as wild as I am. This is all of who I am. Because over my life as a healer, I struggled with people really reacting to me. Like people would have these visceral reactions. Like they would either love me and want to be my best friend, or they would literally I would touch something in them and like they'd hate the air that I breathe, and I'd be like, what's going on? Why are people, so I had to go through a journey of just learning, like, no, this is how God made me, divine and unique. And for whatever reason, man, the light inside of me, man, sets some people off. But that is not a reflection of me. That's more their unwillingness to look at themselves and heal. So there's a lot of little nuances to this. And no, I love doing things live like that. And maybe I'll do more. I'm also on TikTok, and I just kind of started with TikTok. But I'm really excited to start doing some lives with that. I have to get to 1,000 followers or whatever first. And then working with YouTube and all that fun stuff. So I'm definitely doing more with social to get out there and really talk to people, because people are really hurting right now. And that was also one of my decisions to kind of close my physical practice, which took a lot of time, and go more virtual and go more online, because I'll be able to help more people really with the wisdom that I've gained over, all of these years. So, yeah, so thanks for sharing, everybody. Let's see, hold on. Yeah, cool, groovy. All right, Cam, reaching out, speaking up allows others. Yes, exactly. Reaching out and speaking up allows others, hold space for us to process and flow through more. Absolutely. Yes, I love. Very good. All right, cool. Any other questions, comments, concerns, wisdoms, or complaints? All right, groovy. Oh, hold on. One more. Let's see. Just a thank you. All right, cool. So right now I'm physically in Virginia Beach. I'll be in Spain at the end of said month. So if you're in Spain, I'll be there and be working with some people out there. And then also work virtually as well. You can text or call my office at any time. I have amazing people that work for me and have worked for me for years, that support me, manage my schedule, and all the things for media, as well as for patients care, individual patient care. So that's our office number. Our website has our mini courses, our transformational courses on it. Yep. And yep, Jackie, my courses are on our website. So I leave my physical practice I'm in and out of the country until January of 2024. So my physical practice, I'll be closing down in January. But again, I treat telehealth. I already 85% of my practice is telehealth anyway. So having the weight of a physical location doesn't really serve me anymore. But my online courses are on my website. You'll see online classes. I do live classes like this one. And I also do pre-recorded classes and courses that are done. At the end of this month, I launch my holistic health coaching program and teach people how to do this work. My IG is Dr. Erica Steele. Holistic Family Practice is also another IG. I'm on all the socials: Facebook, IG, Clubhouse, TikTok, YouTube, Pinterest. We have all that stuff. It's all on our website. LinkedIn, really just to get as much information out there as we can about holistic health. This month is Minority Health Month, so I'll be talking about that. I'm also on WTKR News Channel 3, so I'll be on that Coast Live on Tuesday talking about minority health. So if you're local to Virginia, feel free to tune into that. I teach more about that, and I have Lunch and Learn coming up on ancestral trauma. If you sign up for our newsletter, you'll get all of our events and classes and all that kind of stuff. We email that out to everybody. We email once a week and educate along with recipes and fun stuff like that. So yeah, let me see, hold on. Local for a few months, but excited about online opportunities. Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of, me. I'll be only out of the country for like a week, and then back in to New York, and then back again for a few months, and then back out to St. Lucia for a couple of weeks and then back in the States somewhere, I don't know where, and then be back in St. Lucia again for a month. So I'm in and out, I'm bouncing around, moving around, just, living my life. So, all right, cool. Is there anything else? Any last minute questions, comments, concerns, insights, wisdoms, complaints, validations, assurances needed? Yeah, and so I just want to thank everybody for attending. I really love teaching. As if you guys could tell, I love just pouring into people and showing them a different way of living and a different way of thinking and a different way of being and a different way of healing. If we all take radical personal responsibility with ourselves and our life, and we begin to heal ourselves individually, then collectively we'll be able to heal this crazy little world that we're living in. So I thank you all for being part of the solution and creating different results in your life, one of joy, happiness, serenity, and peace. And if there's no other questions, I'm going to end our training. If you have signed up with your email, I will email out the PowerPoints as well as the recording of this particular class. You know what? I actually didn't record it. Oops. But it will be on the YouTube. So I think that probably recorded it. So I'll send out the link to the YouTube. So that's even better. So, all right, cool. Well, if there's nothing else, I'm going to peace out and enjoy the rest of my Saturday. And I encourage you all to do the same. Yay. All right, cool. See y'all later. Peace out.